On Monday, April 14th, 2025, I'd like to call this Heritage Advisory Committee meeting to order. The first thing is the land acknowledgement. The town of Aurora acknowledges the Anishinaabe lands on which we live and work by the official and tributary of the Chippewas of Georgina Island, as well as many other nations whose presence here continues to this day. As the closest First Nation community to Aurora, we recognize the special relationship the Chippewas have with lands and waters of this territory. They're the water protectors and environmental stewards of these lands, and as a municipality, we join them in these responsibilities. We further acknowledge that Aurora is part of the treaty lands of the Mississaugas and the Chippewas, recognized through Treaty 13, as well as the Williams Treaties of 1923. A shared understanding of the rich cultural heritage that has existed for centuries and how our collective past brought us to where we are today will help us walk together into a better future. Let it be. Okay, I need an approval of the agenda. Oh, it's the revised agenda. Thank you. Okay, you guys got to do so much last week. I am going to suggest that you second it. Thank you. Okay. Are there any questions on the minutes, on the agenda rather? Questions or comments? No. I'll vote. All those in favor? That carries. Any declarations of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, we'll go on to the receipt of the minutes. These are from February 3rd, 2025. Could I have someone move and second these minutes? John. Just don't jump all over the place. Put up your hand, guys. Thank you. All those in favor? Okay, delegations. We do have a delegation from Christopher Watts. Christopher, read the Aurora Heritage Authority, the wooden plaque. So welcome to the table, Christopher, and you're already here. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you. And I've got a presentation. Excellent, thank you. So the last time I was before you guys as a committee, I was to address a town-owned plaque that was an error, or still an error, for about 10 years. Tonight, we're going to look at over 100 town-owned plaques and what we can do to better ensure that they're appropriate. So the plaque program that exists, it's actually hard to find some details, and I'll get into that a little bit later. But one brochure that came forward had some points that I thought provided a really good overview of the program. And it's talking about commemoration, increasing sense of community, and pride. So just want to keep those in everybody's minds. This program brochure was also useful because it's one of the things that talks about what is a plaque. Well, the plaque description actually gets into it there, and I've highlighted some pieces where it talks about being attractive multiple times, along with being durable. And I've compared that with, or contrasted it with, a photo of an active plaque I took last week, which doesn't seem to live up to the terms that are outlaid to you. So tonight I want to look at 4 major components of this program: the status, the maintenance, the communication, and some oversight. What I was explaining before about if you try and go and find anything about this program online, you're kind of cut right off at the knees. The actual guide for the listing says go and find this guide. You go to the website. There's a section for guides. It's not on the website. Next is a fact. If you do a search on the town website, which I don't encourage people to do because it doesn't work, if you do find this guide, it actually is 9 years old. So there's a gapping here, and I'm not understanding why this hasn't been refreshed or brought back towards committee for input, because the other component is the form that people use to get a plaque, and it was refreshed last year. So there's a discrepancy there, and the plaque is on the website, but there really is nothing to kind of address and kind of interest people in this program. or even say, hey, this program is running, because as far as I'm looking at things, I just wondered if it was defunct. So in trying to determine more about how many plaques are there, like what do we know that we know about plaques or don't know, I reached out to Adam and he provided this, which is, I guess, 12 pages of a spreadsheet that was used as an inventory system. So I'm going to pass around because I don't know how many people on the committee would have come across this or bumped into it. But if you look at this thing, it really works as a table and it has very limited fields, doesn't capture things consistently. And worst of all, it doesn't give you a total of how many plaques are in this program. And this is the inventory control system that's in place. I've listed some other concerns with it here, but we can deal with it later. Next slide. So I went through it and my calculation is there are 136 plaques. I went down and I've put a table together as to when the years that the plaques came out. And a lot of them would have grouped together somewhere in the early 1990s. There was another batch of them in the early about 2008, I think. But this is helpful because it's going to show you how long those plaques have been out in groups and how they've aged. The real question here is, okay, there's 136 plaques. How many of them are still attached to buildings? How do we know? If you take this inventory, you go out in the world, and this, I'm providing you photos from Google Maps because it's a perfect photo reference to use. You can see here, here's a property, it's listed in this inventory, and yeah, up until 2014, hey, there's a plaque on the building, no plaque. Next slide. Here's another one. This is Flurry House, right? There's the plaque right by the door. Everybody sees it going in. 2020, plaque's gone. And there is a point I kind of understand why that plaque was removed for this property. We can discuss it a bit. Next slide. Yet another example, just a little bit farther down on Yonge Street. Here we have the 2019, 1 year later, plaque gone. So what's going on with these plaques? Next slide. I think to better capture and work with the data, we need a better inventory control system. It has to do more, it has to address things. There's obvious things, even the names and the dates that are on the plaques themselves are not in this inventory list. Like simple things like this. Everybody that has a plaque submits a photo of the plaque that goes on the building. If the town has them, why are they not part of the inventory system? They're not getting used in any other way, shape, or form. So there's a lot of work here that kind of needs to be done. Next. We get into some of the core components of actually cost and maintenance of this program. I went and looked at some other programs, and some of these municipalities will do full cost recovery. Some of them look to do part and subsidize, and Aurora basically puts the full bill. It doesn't really say anywhere in any documentation what that costs the town. From what I understand from back and forth with Adam, it's about $100. These are all done in wood with some kind of vinyl overlay. And I guess at some point when they did this, they made a whole bunch of wood blanks. So the good thing is, I guess the cost is being kept underneath inflation if we continue to use these blanks, which is helpful, but we don't know when those are going to run out, what the protocol is going to be when that happens. So it's just something to think about. So why I was doing that tally before, I was explaining to you is, here's the numbers for how many plaques are going to potentially become end of life. Because you can look on here and see, okay, around 30 years it was used as a thing for replacing a plaque. So you go backwards and go, okay, we have so many in this, so many in that. Then you kind of do the math, go, I guess we're going to need to put some money against this, which means, is that being done proactively in some budget item somewhere? That would be great to know. I haven't seen it.
Are you able, do you have a lot more, or are you able to?
There's two other sections to this, yeah. Yeah.
A motion, please, to extend the time for Mr. Watts for his presentation. Thank you. Oh, boy.
Okay, thanks. Next slide. This plaque feature here is right in the prominent historic downtown core. It's right on the southeast corner of Yonge and Wellington. And there is, inside of the Memorandum of Understanding, there's this understanding that the owner of the store is supposed to maintain the signs, which again are durable, but effectively also report them to the town. And I don't see that that's happening maybe at the rate maybe the town is expecting. I think there needs to be a little bit more involvement from the town side for taking ownership of and maintenance of plaques, understanding that they live for a certain amount of time. Next slide. And this is important when properties change hands. So there is something written to this memorandum of understanding saying, oh yeah, the outgoing seller and the new coming property member are supposed to shake hands in some way, shape, or form, and a new memorandum comes forth. I don't see this happening, and I think, again, the town needs to take a stronger role in this. My example for that is at the south end of town. So notice up even in the inventory, it doesn't list what this building is. So on the plaque, which is gone, this is a Quaker meeting house, not even listed as such in the inventory. Was important enough to have a plaque, switched ownership, plaque's gone. What's the story? Or do we even know? So the communication piece here is weak at best. This is a brochure which has so much detailed information on what you would expect to find on a website. Doesn't exist on our website. Why not? We've now lost a bunch of knowledge of things that people would be asking for. Next slide. And the inventory by itself is not a secretive thing. These people have asked to have plaques. It should be on the website. There's portals that exist and scrub data up above, and there is an open data initiative. There's really no reason for this information not to be shared, especially if the idea is to celebrate and have pride in our town. Next slide. Because when you look at it, there's expectations that all this should be on the website. The brochure actually states that this information will be on the website. The Memorandum of Understanding asks for consent to say, hey, by the way, you know this stuff is going to go on a website. So expectation is this is all going on a website. X amount of years pass, no information on the website. What happened? Slide. The other part of this is there are other plaque programs. Like Aurora's not unique in doing this. So I've listed a bunch here. This is an interesting one, which I'll just, again, pass around, which is Brampton's. And at the very back is an entire list of all of their plaques. It's very professionally done. It's showing you that what the expectations are and what's happening around us. In Calgary, everything's up on a website, all like GIS marked, and allowing you to kind of do it on a map interface. Next slide. So the other thing with these plaques is the guide speaks to the fact that they're specifically for designated and listed properties. And we know with Bill 200 approaching, we're going to not have that dynamic. So I don't understand effectively how that changes the program and what changes need to be made. Like, are we just going to remove a whole bunch of plaques from buildings? Are we going to grandfather something in? There should be some update to the program with that respect. Next slide. And this committee has had a whole oversight of wooden plaques in the past. I put an example there of 2017. I'm just looking, going, where has the committee had the role to look at this? Where is it being brought forward to them? And I asked staff, and I said, you know, when we do the last review of this, when is an expected review? And there isn't one. And nothing's wrong because nobody's been able to say anything's wrong. And in my view, it's like if you don't provide the opportunity, you're not going to get the input. You're not going to be able to make the changes. Next slide. So these are the points collected from what I just said as to what I expect would be reasonable changes to craft an action plan. So I'm just looking for the committee to potentially discuss tonight, leave it with our council representative, have it go and provide adequate direction to make some positive changes to the program. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Thank you, Christopher. I want to see the shape of work on this. Or if you well, that needs to be done. Are there any questions or comments from the committee for Mr. Watts, also known as Christopher? Questions or comments?
It's good. Everything was there. Very well scheduled. Great reception.
Yeah. Okay.
I would just say thank you, Christopher, for bringing this to our attention. again, I would fault that we've had so many different heritage planners in charge that sometimes things just get mispiled. And at the same time, I'm thinking Adam's probably quite busy with the regular stuff, but I would hope that maybe we can add some spit and polish to the program. My next door neighbor was asking me a few months ago about getting a plaque. And I wasn't sure how to answer that, although I have them on our heads. It's in good repair. So, do we need a motion from us, or is it just advisement?
The comments are going to go back to staff, so, or staff respond. Are there any other comments?
I got one comment. Thank you for the presentation, it was great. And the one thing that hit home was regarding the change of ownership, because maybe that current homeowner understands the importance of that plaque. Someone up comes in, there is no discussion. What is this thing? It just basically takes it down. So yeah, if we could figure out, a way around that. I know that we also have some co-op students involved in that.
Yeah, I'm hoping to speak to it later in the business, we can accommodate the community.
Maybe that's.
It would be a perfect opportunity. Yeah, I think there needs to be some sort of standardized approach to even providing new owners with. This is why the plaque belongs here and why it's important that that information be forwarded.
So that's all. Chris, thank you so much. That's so helpful, and as a new committee member to have that orientation to all the history that you bring. I see the ownership piece as the 2.0. I think the 1.0 is even just the basics, right? Like everything you outlined, which is like it costs no money and it costs no skill and also very little effort in terms of like putting the information on the website, getting a guide, like you circulate the Brampton guide. It would take nothing to reformulate that with images we already have. Like it's like a half day work of that, right? Posted so that at least people can have the information where they can Google and get to the right thing. The ownership change and all that, and they're placing plaques, that I see as the okay, once we get the basics, we can move on to that. But the fact that we don't even have the initial steps in place, like that should be priority, I think, to just get that done and then move on to
The recommendation made a couple times is full audit of plaques, which means physically going to the site, looking and going, is there a plaque? I mean, those are the basic things that you're speaking to, right? One of the things is when you're going to go through that effort, you have an inventory control system, so you do it right. This thing I meant to point out, because Bob was talking about change of heritage planning managers. Yeah, there has been quite a few and it's churned. This document, when I printed it out, its title is Current 2010 Register with Updates. The author is so that's 4 heritage planning managers again. So if we just went and plugged the stuff back into this, you're going to end up with problems, which is why hopefully the pieces that I've suggested that are best practices elsewhere go through that. And you're right, get that step done, then layer it with the next one. And then on top of that, then maybe get into your website pieces or have one of those spin up alongside of it. But yeah, there's enough to be done just to right the ship.
So this register is 15 years old.
The initial thing that was probably built, that hasn't, I'm just saying this hasn't changed much from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 fields in 15 years. Yeah. And
because the actual heritage registry is up to date of the inventory of properties, right? So that could be something that we could add a column on that even to say like what's the plaque status and then
yeah, and this inventory has a lot of field or entries into it, which are properties that don't have plaques, but obviously are either listed or designated properties. They don't need to show up on this inventory. Like the way that this gets done, gets put into a database, the database gives you back the report. Those are the pieces. And I'm so surprised we've had 15 years go by us and nothing. So, yeah.
Thank you. I think so better. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, it doesn't have enough information on it to be viable in any means at all. It just has all the addresses on it, yes, no, and the rest is all NAA. It was really pretty useless. Except for that there is a couple of things that have been mentioned. I mean, like you said, a co-op student walk door to door. That's a couple of days, that's what they do in the summer anyway. That's a good, great job for a university student to pick up and then to put it all together and put it on the website. That's their cup of tea, right?
Yeah.
Like, and get paid for it.
It's volunteer job.
Well, that's a volunteer job.
But they can put it on their resume.
Oh, there you go, okay. But even still, you know, part-time.
I'm gonna let Adam
Sorry.
reply to things that have been said. Okay, go on.
Through Madam Chair. Referencing that document is 15 years old. I'm not sure what you're referencing. You could be saying 2010 as the PDF file name. I don't know
Yes,
what you're
yeah, that's kind of what it
That
is.
doesn't mean that's a 15-year-old document first and foremost. Secondly, if that's a database, there's a plethora of files, of systems that aren't captured there. I can respect the fact that you have that document. There is more information. The register is a paramount document, but it's entirely separate from this as well. That goes to what we said in terms of designated and listed. In Plaque, there's no correspondence in terms of the legal status. The co-op student mechanism, they're a great resource for sure. Quite frankly, I'm not their high school. I'm not sure if they even have their license to drive around, things like that. It's quite resource intensive to do the full audit. I'm a department of one individual, or department, whatever you want to call it. My role is also for the policy planning, as we know. It is quite resource intensive. And the other question I have too is, if I may to the delegate, you've delegated 6 or 7 times in a row on a variety of matters. If everything's a priority, what is the number one priority? We're doing doors open. We've updated our student union policy. We're doing an audit of the poppy signs. I've been negotiating with the OHC for the past month based on your blue plaque. Attention you brought to that. Delegate on the salvage program. You've created the heritage grant program. I don't have the resources. I have to make that clear to this committee.
Which is fine, but this is a program that exists on the town website. So if the town doesn't think it can operate, doesn't have the resources for it, it needs to communicate out to everyone that that's the case and shutter the program. That's
Yes.
There's no need to shutter the program. It's still effectively working today. I have a number of inquiries. I believe Dan may have been the one you referenced, and I could be mistaken. We're working on a platform right now. We gave a plaque to Norm Johnson's house on Kanawha. It's still an effective program. When we're looking at legacy issues, when you're peeling back the onion of 40 years, that's incredibly difficult. We are going through a website update. This is something that we've already flagged and is already in progress. When the new website is up and running, we will have a better interface going, right? But going back 40 years and going back into the history is I can appreciate it, of course, but it's remarkably difficult.
First of all, thank you for clarifying that. I think one of the points would be that if somebody wants to plaque, that it be available on the website, how they go about doing it, how they get in touch. Is that there? Yes.
Yes, through Madam Chair, it is. Do I agree it could be enhanced? Yes, that's fair to say, and that's something that we've already flagged as our website gets updated.
Thank you.
The other thing as well, I think the committee should be made aware of, is that in 2019, council passed a delegated authority bylaw. I delegated authority of this program to the discretion of the director. That's why some of those reference materials from 2016 and prior, that's all now with the authority of the director. He has authority of the program. Right, so that's why some of the guides and some of the interfaces, it's simply a matter of contacting myself, having a conversation, like using Dan or the Johnson house property as the 2 most recent examples. Again, it's running effectively today. My concern is kind of what you mentioned, Chris, going legacy into the audit, into the 40 years back, and the responsibility is on the owners too. If they notify me, we can get them a plaque within a month or 2. That's not the difficult part. But it's again, if I'm aware of the issue, I can correct it. But it's getting out there, going through 150 odd properties right now. It's a lot.
No, I should sit down.
Yeah. Questions have to go through me, folks. John?
Chris, I wondered, Brampton, for example, is there any incentive that's put forward by the town to the individual owners of the houses to make them, understand it's important?
John?
Is there any kind of a incentive given?
This would be a question through me, I think, to Adam.
Okay. I just wondered whether Brampton, I asked whether Brampton had the incentive. And do you know if there's any incentive? Well, we could
Adam could
maybe do the same
speak to
thing.
that, yeah.
Through you, Madam Chair. So in terms of incentive, the plaque program is entirely free to anyone who wants a plaque, even a replacement plaque.
Yeah.
It's entirely free. That, to me, in the morning is somewhat of an incentive. I know, you know, I keep saying that. From the latest examples, they're quite appreciative of that. I hand deliver these plaques, I pick them up from the supplier, we negotiate a very good price for them. And I'm hand delivering these things, right? So they're always very appreciative. I do think we go above and beyond. To me, that's an incentive. I get what you're saying too, John, in terms of, you know, one could say that pursuing designation is an incentive too, in that you receive a plaque. You have the Heritage Grant Program that may marry some of this, different realms, in the sense that it's a broader spectrum in terms of encouraging designation that you get a free plaque, you get opportunities through the grant program. So that's more of a holistic or comprehensive approach that we're developing. And that's something that's, I mentioned earlier, the council saw that last week, and we'll be going to council at the end, or committee of the whole, I should say, and then council at the end of the month in terms of approving that Heritage Grant Program. That's really, I think, a very key document in terms of incentives for designation.
Yes, and not everybody listens to council meetings or watches. So it would be a good idea that we have some communication to the general public to say this program is, you know, I don't have to tell you, but just for the awareness component.
Through you, Madam, the mail piece too, as well, was discussed at council to this committee's knowledge. The grant, I think, was generally well received. It still has to go to council after committee of the whole, but one, I think, big takeaway was the communication piece there as well, in terms of advertising the program, making it more aware. That's a good opportunity to some sort of couple even the plaque program as well. If we are doing a mail out, which we will do a mail out to all district properties or designated properties to make them aware of this grant program, and that's a good opportunity to insert another letter about the plaque program as well. So
Thank
those are
you.
things that are all on our radar.
Through you, Madam Chair, to Adam, if I may. To get a wooden plaque is all volunteer on the part of the owner. I'm fuzzy on when there's a new owner of a building. Is there some bonus on that person to maintain the plaque, or is it kind of up to them whether they want to keep it on the building?
Through you, Madam Chair. I can generally summarize, I think, what is the core issue, so to speak, is I don't know the best term, but the custodianship or being a custodian of those plaques, right? Because what Chris mentioned is true, and I think it's in the sense that once a plaque is given out, it does become the responsibility of the owner to notify us if it's weathered, if it's broken, if it's there's a change in misplaced. Because even if we did an audit today, I do see the value in that as well. I'm not trying to downplay that. But then 10 years from now, or a year from now, someone could lose another plaque or whatever. And I know there needs to be the continual monitoring. I respect that too, Chris, and I get that. But yes, that is the crux of the issue, if I may, in the sense that there's always going to be that paradigm, if you will, or that issue in terms of the owner has to notify us to be on the ball, so to speak, with it. Otherwise, it's a continual audit basis. In a perfect world, we'd probably be auditing every 3 to 5 years or less every year. But
Maybe it's the file you said on the back, return to town.
on the back of the bridge. Fair enough, yeah.
No, but it is a point because although I imagine most of the heritage houses are in the heritage district, there are still some that aren't. People buying a house in the heritage district hopefully would be aware, because they've chosen to buy a house there. But maybe, I don't know if we could provide them some information. I don't know how hard it would be, how much time would be consumed, but it's something that we could think about.
Absolutely. Through the Madam Chair too. So as some of you actually may be aware of heritage property owners too. Heritage designation laws are registered on site. So when you go through where you purchase property, you see the designation bylaw right down in there, right? So that is a sort of a notice system under the Provincial Heritage Act, you have to register those bylaws. Legally speaking, we don't register the plaque because then that's separate from the legal designation process. But yes, these owners are aware that they're designated. They're buying the property, that's what they're purchasing, right?
Right.
And yeah, I mean, as being aware as a designated property owner, you would hope there is, again, custodianship, if that's a word, in terms of that plaque as part of your heritage property. But there's clearly gaps. I recognize that as well. And yeah, but these owners would be aware that they're designated. Is essentially what I'm trying to say.
Through the chair, can I ask
Yes, I'm just trying to think something through.
there's the blue plaque is the heritage plaque, and then you've got the wooden plaque. What do we call that wooden plaque? Is it? Okay,
Yeah, so through you, Madam Chair, not to be confused with Chris's delegation at our last meeting, that's an Ontario Heritage Trust blue plaque.
okay.
That's the provincial program. In terms of, we can apply for a blue plaque, and if they approve it, it's installed, and it does become our town property. That's printed, if you will, or manufactured by the province in terms of those blue plaques that you see at the armory.
But that's the one that would be on when you purchase the property. That's the one
It's the wooden plaques
it's the one,
that we're talking about tonight.
yes. I just wanna make sure I'm not
Yeah,
confusing the two,
no
that's all,
worries.
sorry.
And through Madam Chair, designation again is entirely separate from plaquing. Plaquing is more of that incentive piece or that commemorative piece and that
Okay.
pride piece, right? But legally speaking, it has no legal basis.
Through Madam Chair, not a question per se, but more of a commentary on just reacting. So I think we need to just step back a bit and realize that what we're talking about is decision in terms of like heritage culture and importance. So to insinuate that there's gaps, I would just say gaps towards what? Like what are we measuring against? So if it's important, then we set the criteria of what we want it to look like. And then we ensure that it meets that criteria. But in any municipality, there's, and you would know this better than any of us, there's so many different trade-offs that we all have to make of like, what's the priority? Where's the funding going? Where's the time going? And I really liked your comment about there's so many different heritage choices that we can make, even within this program, this committee. So the question then becomes, where do we sit on that sliding scale of like low-hanging basics? Like low-hanging basic is the right forms on the website, someone can find the form if they are interested. That I see as a kind of fundamental that doesn't take anything, that should be fixed. The other side of the scale in terms of culture and focus is like a heritage database, an audit, a refresh of all these plaques, a survey, like all the things you could do that all require time, money, some form of resource. I think somewhere in the middle, this is my own personal assessment, somewhere in the middle is probably appropriate in terms of a benchmark. We can't go another 6 months with the wrong form on a site, but are we gonna get funding to do a database, a survey, refresh all plaques? Maybe not. And then the other piece that I would just interject into the conversation, just be considered, is we're all aligned that we want to see more plaques than less plaques because we're here, like we're on the Heritage Committee. But I think we also at the same time have to respect and remember that there might be some people who purchase or live in or own a listed property, not necessarily a designated one, where they don't really care about the plaque and we're not going to like force the plaque on them. So if their plaque is in disarray and they don't want to change it, like it's their house. So I think in the point of like getting somewhere in the middle, what I don't want happening is folks not have access to the information. And anybody, we all know how the town of Aurora service works. You reach out, you get an answer, like at least for me, you get an answer in like 2 hours. So I'm sure anybody who has asked Adam, like, how do I get a plaque? Those people are getting a plaque. Or if they want to refresh their plaque, they're getting a new plaque. But it's like, how do we get those folks who don't know about the program or don't know where to go or don't know Adam there? That's kind of more my concern than doing a full-blown audit and like a database and all that. I think that's something we can get to on a roadmap, but we have to start somewhere small. And maybe there's something we can even do as a committee in terms of like helping with like the draft guidelines or to do something offline to assist with just the low-hanging fruit, like updating the guide or things like that. But I think there's different like steps that we can choose what to do versus doing like an all or nothing.
No, you go ahead.
So you made it, Madam Chair. I do think though that we're maybe overlooking one of the key components, which is we need to rely on the homeowners to understand the value of the historical properties. And so, you know, I think that it's a partnership between the municipality and the homeowners. And if the homeowners maybe require further information, then that is where maybe down the line a database comes in or some sort of deeper delve into the historical significance of those properties. But ultimately, if I'm a homeowner and I purchase a heritage property, presumably it's not because I'm interested in changing all the electrical from knob and tube to modern day, right? I want a property that has heritage significance. And if that's the case, which I would assume would be, because otherwise be taking on a whole lot of extra work for no real benefit, then presumably those individuals have a level of respect and commitment to preserving local history. So I think obviously making the form accessible, making it not a broken link, like those are all really easy things to fix. But I think the broader conversation that we're really having is how do we make people care about local history? And I think that is a much more challenging, esoteric question, which we all try to answer every time we're together. But you know, I think this is a really tangible way of saying there's a program, we can provide you with a plaque if you want it, but more than that, you know, why might you want it? And I think that's where maybe we can talk about spitballing different ways of helping them understand the historical significance. And also the fact that historical significance is not clearly defined. It's significant to whom, based on when, what's the scale, what's the profundity. These are not simple questions to answer. So, you know, I think that's a much bigger conversation. But, you know, if I'm a homeowner of a heritage property, I want a plaque because I care about the heritage property. And it seems like that's readily accessible as long as the link for the form gets fixed.
And through Madam Chair, I'll make it abundantly clear, the form is available on the website.
Yeah, okay, so this,
So it is there, I don't want to.
Is it
dismiss
easy to
that.
find?
I believe
Well,
so, but
like,
it's hard for me to say from
Our
an outsider's
website is
perspective,
difficult,
so-
could you check?
But it is there, the form is there, and I appreciate you saying that. I get it, I respond to it. So, appreciate it. My name is.
Also, we fairly recently, the committee that Jacqueline Smith was on,
Yes.
we recently have the consultants and committee members have gone through every item as possible heritage property in Aurora and said, is it going to be designated? Or it doesn't have enough significance, and there are four, I think. There are several criteria anyways. So we've done that. And we've had a little bit of backlash. But for the most part, I think that the people who are in heritage homes want to be recognized. And the ones that don't have the heritage significance, we just had this massive list. So we've now clarified that, and that's only maybe 4 or 5 years ago. So it's pretty up to date.
Yeah, 3 months, even less.
Even less.
2022, so yeah, no.
It was during COVID.
Yeah, if I may.
Right, that's right.
It's a very good point, and that also ties into Chris's point about, and Chris, both Chris's points about listed versus designated as well. And historically, plaques were going to listed properties. This is my opinion, and you know, now under the director's delegated authority of the program, I think it should be going to designated properties, right? I think the province now with legislative changes too has made it clear either designated or you're not, with the expectation that listed properties are coming off in 2027 as well. And that goes back to what you were saying, Madam Chair, in terms of our list is updated. We've received 60 designations in the past 2 years. This was something that even when I was door knocking on people's houses, in terms of the consultation with them to try and get buy-in for designations was something I said to them as well, to your point, Joanne, in terms of this other available incentive available to them. So it is something that's building that confidence and framework again, but what I'm trying to really wrap this up in is the differentiation between designated and listed.
Right, if it's not designated, it can be torn down, so
So
We're not
Chair, if you
considering-
want to be putting plaques on those, personally, I think they should be reserved for designated, but
if somebody wants I mean, it would have to be a
Yes.
different kind of plaque, yes.
Sorry, through you, Madam Chair, since we're still on the delegations, I
Yes.
feel like the committee would like to discuss this further, perhaps this can be discussed under new business as well further, and we can move on with receiving the delegations.
Okay, all those in favor of receiving the delegation? Thank you, this is the Sheeta, Sheeta's wonderful.
Yeah, she's fine.
I like that. Okay, so, yes, we actually do have a motion, I do. So, Adam, we have, I believe, somebody online who's presenting this.
I can introduce Sergeant Ginger.
Okay, that would be good. So, Sheeta, do I have to put this, do I need to move her in a second here to put this on the table?
We can listen to the presentation first, and we'll find out the presentation.
Thank you. Okay, so would you like to introduce? Sarah?
Yes, through you, Madam Chair, very briefly, I'll speak to the memorandum at hand and then just turn it over to the owner applicant and their consultant who's joining us virtually as well. So through you, this is the memo or grant proposal at 1012 Spruce Street, and this is within the Northeast Heritage Conservation District. As attached to this memo, the owner has prepared a heritage impact assessment and evaluation, which has determined that the existing property does not have individual heritage value, and that's the metric of Ontario Regulation 906 and the Ontario Heritage Act. And that the proposed new build is consistent with the HCD guidelines, the Heritage Conservation District guidelines. So this permit application for everyone's consideration, it's the demolition of the existing property as well as an evaluation of consistency and conformity of the proposed new build within the district guidelines. Comments from the Heritage Committee will then be incorporated to a future report to Council on the ultimate decision. And as mentioned, the consultant is online with us as well for the presentation.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, thanks.
Okay, great. So apologies for not being there in person today. I'm just going to share my screen. Okay, can everyone see the screen now?
Yes, thanks.
Great. Okay, so my name is Emma Kohlmeyer. I'm an associate with ERA Architects. So we are an architecture planning and design firm based in Toronto with a focus on heritage conservation. So as Adam mentioned, we're the heritage consultant. We prepared a heritage impact assessment for the proposal. So I'm just going to walk through briefly a couple of slides showing our findings in a bit more detail on our assessment, our analysis, and the proposal. Okay, so this is the site. So we're 10 to 12 Spruce Street. So we're the northwest corner of Spruce and Center Street. So you can see here in the blue, and then a photo here on the right. So this is showing the existing building. So it's a 1.5 story residence. So it's actually being used, or it's a duplex right now. So 2 units are in use on the site. So this photo is taken from Spruce Street, and we're looking west towards the building. So again, a closer up shot. So this is the front elevation. So this is the east elevation. So we visited the site a couple of months ago, much colder weather. And 2 shots here showing the side elevation. So on the left is the north elevation. And on the right is the south elevation. So just a quick recap here on the history of the site. So despite the, the vinyl cladding and the extensive alterations, it is an old building. So it was constructed in the 1880s. So it changed hands a number of times in its early years. And then it was eventually bought by Mr. Watson, who was a dairyman. So from about 1912 to 1946, this site and the lot to the north, there was a dairy business that was run there. So the lot to the north had the dairy business, and then the owners of Watson's Dairy, they lived on the site for about, I guess, 35 years. So in terms of any of that associative value to do with the dairy business, as it hasn't been there for approximately 80 years, we see that, that connection or that value is no longer representative or shown on the site. Unfortunately, there was no historic photos of the building, but in our analysis and our summary, in terms of any potential design value for the building, it's really kind of a very modest vernacular building. I think in the HCD plan, it's noted as a Georgian building, but in our analysis, it's kind of lost its architectural integrity and legibility really as a late 18th century structure. And then I'll just kind of shift over to the analysis in terms of its contextual value as part of the HCD. So on the screen now you can see in yellow, so this is the boundaries of the HCD. So our site is located here with the blue star. So we're kind of in the southeastern portion. So again, at the corner of Spruce and Center Street. So Spruce Street is a much more intact kind of contextually appropriate or a contextually applicable street for the HCD, as well as Catherine and Maple Streets. And then Center Street, we've kind of characterized it or described it as really an evolved street. So there are some historic buildings, some historic fabric, and then also a number of new contemporary buildings on that street. And a lot of them are, you know, multi-unit, higher density structures and residences. So there's really those two sort of converging zones, or it's kind of in a transition zone that we've spoken about in our report. So an image of the proposal, I'll just start here on the left. So this is a bird's eye or a plan view of the proposal. So in brown, you can see the new proposal here. So it's a semi-detached new building. And then the blue outlines are showing the existing structure. So the blue outline, what I'm showing with my cursor here, this is the main house. And then this other one here to the rear is the existing attached garage. So the main thing to note on this graphic here is really just the change in setbacks. So the existing building is much closer to the street, and then the new proposal is pushed back quite significantly, and that really aligns with the other character defining structures and buildings on Spruce Street. So here on the right is an image of the proposal, and I'll come back to that slide in a couple, I guess, 2 more slides down. So as Adam mentioned, we completed an evaluation for potential cultural heritage value of the building under Ontario Regulation 906, and we found that it did not meet the criteria or any of the 9 categories for designation. So in our view, removal of the existing building will not present a negative impact. And as I mentioned at the beginning, so it's currently is being used as a duplex. So there's 2 units on site. So this low scale residential use will be maintained with the new proposed semi-detached building. And we also, in our view, we see it sort of compatible with this evolving context and kind of this transition zone along Center Street. It's a bit higher density, but that is in alignment with that evolving area along Center Street. So you can see here the images, the top right is showing a view along Spruce Street, and then the bottom right is a view along Center Street. So just those 2 different fabrics and those 2 different character areas. So over the past couple of months, we've been working with the owner who's there. I can't see him on screen, but hi everyone. And the design of the architect team as well. So we've been back and forth on, you know, just looking at the policies and the guidelines in the HCD and how can we do some tweaks to the proposal to really fit in with the existing district. So I'll just kind of walk briefly through some of those design measures. So starting from the top I mentioned before, but pushing that the setback to 6 meters to align with the other character defining buildings on the street. So it's 2 stories in height, so approximately 10 meters. Again, this is consistent with other buildings in the district. We focused in on the front porches. I know that's one of the, you know, defining architectural character points in the district. So 2 separate porches you can see here in the image. Thinking about the appropriate materiality, so we proposed a red brick and then also pulling in some wood details. So there's wood garage doors as well as some of the other architectural detail. Also too, not wanting to replicate each side as exact match for the other. So some articulation and differences between the 2 units. And then thinking about the south wall or south elevation. So this is a corner unit. So that is a street facing elevation. So we just wanted to make sure that there was openings, windows, just some animation and articulation along that wall as well. So in conclusion, so we find the existing building does not meet the criteria for any individual designation or potential cultural heritage value. And then we do find the proposal meets the objectives, the policies and the guidelines for new construction in the old Aurora HCD. So that's all the slides for today, but I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you very much. I think we need to do the mover and seconder now before the questions. So could I have a mover and a seconder to approve? Who hasn't? It's not on record. If you want to. Although, we don't know all those in favor. Okay. So are there, any questions, any concerns to ask Emma? When I first looked at this, I thought it was, especially because of the size, I wasn't happy with the dark colored brick. But when I looked on my map, it seems that that would be unrepresentative of the area. Am I right, Mr. Rob?
Through you, Madam Chair, just to clarify your question, that the dark is not compatible with your suggestion?
I thought, to me, because of the size, I would have liked to have seen some lighter brick. But I think there is on the street, you might know better, I think there is a mix and this would fit in.
Correct. Through you, Madam Chair, that'd be my opinion as well, that specifically the use of brick first and foremost, but
Yes.
I do agree that the color would be appropriate, consistent with the general character of the area. There are a few darker bricks on the center of this district as well.
Yeah.
This area in particular is sort of the border, if you will,
Yes.
so it's a little bit contemporary. But yes, I do think that conforms with our.
But it's definitely part of the
Yeah,
district.
certainly, yes. The bricks and the color, I would say.
Do you have any
I
thoughts on this?
have many thoughts,
Oh, okay, well,
but I don't have questions.
you don't
for
have
the
questions,
presentation.
okay. Thank you, that's quite regular procedure, yes.
I had a question for the presenter. Thank you, Emma. Through you, Madam Chair. When you were saying about the setback from the front of the street and you said you're gonna move the house back 6 meters. If I walk by there quite often, that house that's existing, it's actually a pretty cute little house, but it right now it's on the same plane as the other houses on that street. So moving it back, you're really not aligning them with the rest of the houses. You're moving it back, so I was just a little confused by that comment.
Yeah, so I guess I was speaking more, I guess moving north along Spruce Street towards the Victorian homes. Those are pushed back. I'm not sure the exact dimension, but I would say closer to 6 meters. So I think you're thinking the one directly to the north. You're right. It's about aligned with our existing building. So just kind of finding a balance between, it's not sort of a consistent setback along the street, but I would say for the majority of them are more than what's currently there.
Through you, Madam Chair, I live on Spruce Street and my house is only 2.5 meters and I live north. And my neighbor to the north and south of me are both within 2 to 3 meters of the sidewalk. And we're north Spruce, so
She doesn't have to, that's your observation, and as you, a person living there, so that's a comment, but we can go through that more when we're discussing at the table. I thank you for that, because, yes, I was wondering about that. Did you? No. Okay, so we've got the mover and seconder, so all those in favor of receiving the presentation? Thank you, that carries. Okay, so I guess we are going to hear from you. Oh,
Yeah, so, Madam Chair, so, yeah, as I mentioned, this has to proceed to council for ultimate approval. But if there are comments, Bobby, you may have some as well in terms of potential modifications that the owner can pursue or any comments in general, that's something that can be relayed to council. So.
Okay, and before we go any further, I've been remiss not to recognize that Councillor Ron Weiss has been in attendance since the beginning. This is his ward. Thank you for coming, Ron. Okay, so is that all you're gonna say?
Yeah, open to the floor.
Okay.
If there's any specific questions, through Madam Chair, in terms of the UCD plan or how the designation bylaws are impacted.
I think we'll go to the gentleman who said he had many.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Comments.
I live around the corner and have for about, let's say, 70 years. I would disagree with ERA on their evaluation. And to me, Aurora's first dairy is significant. So on page 47, where it says that the answer is no for organization or institution that is significant to the community, or on page 49, 50, 48 at the top where it says no, that potential to yield information that contributes to the understanding of a community or culture. I don't know outright whether it was the first dairy, but I'm going to suggest that it was. I remember 20 years ago when I was on council talking to Jamie Watts. It's interesting that Watson owner became Watts owner. And Jamie Watts lived there for many years. And I remember I was looking forward to reading about the dairy because I remember him telling me, and I think there were cows along Central Street that were part of this dairy production. Not necessarily during his time, but I guess it's part of the history that he shared with me that he knew of. So I disagree with the note, not that that would necessarily change the outcome. I'd like to suggest that there are no other duplexes on Centre Street. There is a duplex on, no other duplexes on Spruce Street. There is a duplex at 7072 Centre Street that has come before us for different reasons in the past. But that is outright a heritage home, if not a former farmhouse. That was a home to a Aurora once upon a time. So, being a duplex and the only one on the street, I think makes it different. There are no other houses on Spruce Street where the garage is inside the house. None. There is one at 81 Catherine within the Heritage District, and that snuck in when there was no Heritage Committee. It was after a new council was elected before the meetings. And there is one, and I don't know all of the story behind it, just behind 81 Catherine on Centre Street. But it looks less obtrusive. The one on Centre that has the garage as part of the house is much further east on Centre. And to me, the house fits the nature of the area better. I would suggest that there needs to be a detached garage. The report says the owner and consultant have indicated due to siting constraints, that attached garages are more appropriate. Well, they may be more appropriate on the other side of Mark Street along Spruce, But north of Mark Street, Spruce Street continues, but that's not in the Heritage District. And there are all sorts of garages inside houses along that street. Currently, the site has a garage that's detached, so I don't quite understand there being siting restraints or constraints. Another suggestion would be have the house face Center Street rather than face Spruce Street. The house that is directly across Spruce Street from it to the east doesn't face Spruce Street. That corner building. There was an old rickety house there once upon a time, but decades before Heritage District. As that building, but that building on the opposite corner faces Center Street. An option might be that this house faces Center Street. I know that across the road, across Center Street from this house, the brickwork might be a little bit more of the same color as what's proposed. That's an interesting house. So I'm just checking my little cheat sheet. It's the third one because I kept having thoughts pop into my head. So no other. The color of the brick, to me, does not match any house on Spruce Street in the Heritage District. It might match the one that's across the road on Center. That's why I'm suggesting this house face Center Street. I think they could try harder to match the brickwork. For example, 60 Fleury Street, which was the house that came before us about a year ago that was of great concern to the neighborhood because at this stage, that house was proposed to be white. And as a result of whatever Adam and his talent or the builder, the brickwork matches the neighborhood. And I think that's amazing. There's another fairly new build before Heritage, I don't know if it was before or after Heritage District in 2006 at 14 Maple Street, which is just north and across from the Catholic Church parking lot. There's a new, fairly new house there that has bricks that matches the neighborhood. But this one, I don't think the brick color matches at all. And along with what you were kind of mentioning, Madam Chair, to me, this house looks massive. The photos that appear before us on pages 28 and 29, I think are very misleading. I don't think that we need to be influenced, nor council influenced by apartment buildings that are along Yonge Street or at the opposite end of the block on Center Street. I'm not sure why those are in this report, other than to mislead decision makers. It, to me, is suggesting that massive is okay. And I certainly hope that not all houses in the Heritage District could be torn down and houses like this replace the ones that are currently there. I just think it's too big, it doesn't fit. It's one of a standalone duplex, the garage is inside the house. It's very different from the neighborhood.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Bob. Thank you very much. And actually, you also helped me because it just about the color of the brick. I was looking on Center Street, but you're right on Spruce Street. Anyway, I digress because I'm not supposed to speak for you. Thank you.
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. I just wondering if this is going through the Committee of Adjustment as well.
It's what
We're gonna have to go through Committee of Adjustment? Or variances, not at all, it's all good?
they're for size.
So through Madam Chair, site plan as attachment 4 indicates that no variances are
That's-
required. So no committee adjustment approval will be required. That being said, when the building permit is applied for, we always do a preliminary zoning review to ensure most compliance, but at this stage, no.
I didn't think so, I was just double checking.
And that, to go to Bob's point, would mean that the height framework is in line with the zoning standard outside of the heritage realm.
Outside the heritage.
Yeah, correct. And this is our zoning standard now. That's
Yeah.
what we recommend.
But they still need consent. Consent.
Madam Chair, if they are proposing a consent, that's up to the owners in terms of if they would like, I believe the current lot fabric is just the one, but if it is a consent, perhaps, but that wouldn't be to vary from any zoning standards. You are right, there could be a consent consideration for the lot.
Just through you, Madam Chair, I have a follow-on question. So I'm trying to just focus in on what we're providing comments on. So we are providing comments on the delisting of the property, the potential consideration of the delisting of the property, not necessarily the proposed design, because they would still.
Yeah, so through you, Madam Chair, so this heritage permit involves the demolition of the existing structure. So under the hypothetical or the scenario of potential approval, that would be permission through this to demolish the existing. But then since it's located within the district, even this new build still is a designated property because designation runs on title, it's registered on title. And so it's a kind of double-edged heritage permit in that it's demolishing the existing, but you're also then providing comments on the look, consistency, and conformity of the new build as part of the district fabric.
Okay, because that is a very pertinent point that's not clear. Because I can understand us with the amount of information we were provided making one recommendation, but there's not enough information on the design, the new design pieces in my mind. And in my professional opinion, I do not think that this proposed structure is a heritage, like it has heritage flavor and flair and elements of if you're building a heritage subdivision, but it's not a heritage home in a heritage district. Like it's quite clear. So I don't know, like I personally don't think that that's an appropriate look and feel, let alone the brick, because there's red brick everywhere down the street. Like I'm looking on Google, it's everywhere. So that doesn't concern me. And I saw the note about the white soffit fascia not being the final color, so I get that. But the fact that we don't even have a proper rendering with final colors, I don't know how we could comment on what, like if we think that that's appropriate, so.
Yeah, so through you, Madam Chair, again, I'll just look at an example too in terms of at this level, the expectation is these aren't building permit ready drawings, right? This is to get comments from the committee. If it is high level comments like Bob's in terms of the detached garage, this all goes back to the applicant. They have the opportunity to make any revisions before that comes to council. Right, so this is an opportunity. I respect the fact that you're making that it may be relatively high level, but that's where it is in terms of the process prior to building permit issuance. Things can be tweaked as happened in 60/30. But if there are comments like Bob say with concern with the attached garage, that's an opportunity for the applicant to hear those and potentially propose an alternative at the council level.
To you, Madam Chair. Oh, sorry, did you want to? No. Oh. I'd just like to circle back to the conversation number 4 here. The property has historical value or associative value because it has direct associations with a theme, event, belief, person, activity, organization, or institution that is significant to a community. Just with really, really quick research, there's several names that are listed in this report that have historical significance to the town. For example, the Reeve, right, Mr. Sparks, previous to Aurora becoming big enough to be called a town. So I think that to say that there's no associative value is incorrect. I think it also calls into question how we determine historical significance and whose historical significance. And I think that's really key. As part of a dairy that clearly existed for a very long period of time and is actually listed in a lot of historical documents, again, just on really cursory research, clearly there is historical significance to this building. Maybe I don't quite understand deeply enough how the building itself is the one that's designated, but it can be demolished and the property still maintains designation. That's something that is not quite making sense in my head, because in my mind, when there's a building that's associated with historically significant people or events or places, the building also is historically significant. So that's my contribution.
I have a few comments. I think Bob took care of most of them. But going back, is it one lot right now that has to be severed into two, or is it on title? Is it one property? Okay. So effectively, if it's a duplex, you know, we have affordability issues all over the place. We're losing two, and I like the look of this house the way it is. We have to remember something. As soon as we tear this place down, we lose it forever. You lose those two units, you lose the historical factor. You like this might be a project that, you know, lends to a restoration, you know, to bring it back to the, you know, original. I know it's lost a lot of its character. It's lost a lot of its appeal probably over the years, but I don't know if that's enough to take a bulldozer to it. Going, I do have a comment about the garage. The garage, like if we don't have the final say here, if this is going to be demolished or not. If it is demolished, I definitely can see, you know, you can see how you can make one entrance off of Center Street to make a garage in the back, and then one. I think right now the driveway is actually to the north of the house, so very easily you can make the garages, if you were subdividing it, building, you know, two units there, you could definitely put two garages in the back there, and that would allow you to move the house a little closer, and I think it would fall in line with the street. I will reiterate though that, you know, losing those two affordable housing units is a big factor, and I'd really hate to see this historical home demolished, because I think once it's gone, it's gone forever. There's no turning back.
Do you want to respond?
I can. My only comment back would be through you, Madam Chair, is that it is 2 units existing and 2 units being proposed. I get what you're saying in terms of affordability measure.
They're not, yeah.
But it is technically 2 for 2, but I get what you're saying.
Purpose-built, sorry, through Madam Chair, it's more rent, they're, you know, it's a duplex, I'm assuming they're rentals, so, you know, you're taking out 2 affordable rental units out of Aurora, which we're dying to have more of.
Right. Through you, Madam Chair, we can't stipulate whether the owner may want rent use as well. Technically, we don't.
Right, you're right.
Mm-hmm.
You're right. I don't think they would be affordable.
Truthfully, that's a bit of a scope, Madam Chair. We can't speculate.
Through you, Madam Chair, just my comment would be by looking at this and looking at all the pictures, and I went through it all this afternoon, it might not be viable if you look at the foundation in this place. It's been parged, it's a rock foundation. Even, I'm not saying that you couldn't, but just to renovate it or reproduce it would be an extreme amount of money, but it might not be viable to even use the existing that's there. Like to fix it, like yeah, you gotta keep that in mind. I'm like, sure, keep everything is good, okay, but sometimes it's just not, doesn't make sense. Like the foundation in that place looks like it doesn't look very good. So if you have to redo the foundation, take that all out. I don't know if you can duplicate it as nice, but it just probably wouldn't make sense for someone to do that kind of thing, right?
Through Madam Chair, financially, it probably doesn't.
That's what I meant.
But if you have a love for historical buildings, there is an opportunity there. Those stone foundations have been there. That house looks completely level and it's 150 years old. So I think the stone foundation is just fine.
I mean, I haven't looked at it, so I'm just bringing that.
Yeah,
that,
but I understand.
That's all. Yeah, that's all I'm doing. Just bringing it up.
Are there any? Sorry, I'm jumping all around. Are there any trees impacted by this design?
Through you, Madam Chair, I'll just go back to the site plan. Again, the owner and the consultant are available as well. I do not believe so, but I'd have to defer to them for more clarity on that.
I think there are some pretty mature spruce trees on the corner. They're pretty big spruce trees, I wanna say.
That's on
Just like the hedge on Citrus Street. It got much of a year ago.
I think there's two.
These two you're talking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's two pretty fairly.
Yes.
I didn't see those on the site.
Through you, Madam Chair, if it comes to that situation where construction is occurring and there is an application, they would be a separate application as a tree removal permit that then comes before our committee as well. So if that did happen, it would be a separate application for our review. But at this stage, I defer to the owner for any information in that regard. But just recognizing that if that did occur, it'd be a separate permit, tree permit, we get a chance to review that as well.
Yeah, but it would also depend on the site plan that was approved.
And what's finalized. Through Madam Chair, and what's finalized, like this is also an opportunity for the owner to revisit. Again, if hypothetically speaking, demolition is an option here, considered here, but we want to see the owner specifically have a detached garage or implement mitigative measures. Just again, speaking hypothetically, if that's what the owner takes back and revises his plan, that's still an option for them to revise this. This is not by any means set in stone yet. And that's why the comments are valuable.
And I do think that some of the pictures that we're seeing, as Rob said, are a bit misleading with respect to what is in the area, about the apartment building on the corner, but that's a whole different issue.
Through you, Madam Chair, I'm just wondering what kind of secondary check there is in terms of like is there another town expert opinion that should be weighing in? Because I think if I'm just riffing off your point, Cynthia, I personally can separate evaluation of the structure and all those pieces that go along with it with the historical significance. And to me, I cannot get over the historical significance of the property and who lived there. And for me, the fact that that says no in that category just shoots down all credibility of this report, which like is done by an expert firm. So to me, I'm wondering if an expert firm, like the preeminent firm that you would hire to actually come and give this report, is saying that it's not historically significant, but we're doing basic research and determining that it is historically significant. Is there someone there to check that, to say like the town's view? And I don't know, I'm not questioning you specifically, but is someone to say yes or no in terms of whether we agree with that? Because I'm looking at the structure when compared to other structures in the street, one could argue that it doesn't appear as aesthetically, historically significant as the others, but the actual property and who lived there and what occurred on it, that's a fact. You can't really dispute that. So I'm just wondering, like, what our views are there.
Yeah, so three, Madam Chair, good point, and I think that's one thing that it does go through staff, but that's why we have the hearing screen, quite frankly. I think you guys are a very valuable resource in terms of exactly comments like that. That's why this process is the way it's set up the way it is.
Okay.
One thing I will clarify though, in terms of 906 and the criteria, is the province is now required AB3, right? So it is a higher bar, a higher threshold that the province has just recently changed in new legislation. So just meeting one would still not qualify in terms of the provincial standards, so to speak. But in terms of the root question, we're going through that now. Quite honestly, I think the opinions around the table are valuable, as well as my staff review as well. And recognizing this is still early days and changes like 60 flurry can even occur right at the 11th hour.
Okay, that's helpful to understand our input, because even the design elements, like notwithstanding the look of it, which could be drastically improved, the thing like it has two driveways right now. So I don't see a reason why you couldn't do a garage off the one street and a garage off the other street and make that like pull it together and make it work.
Right.
With like proper front porches and like designs that are in keeping with the neighborhood. That to me doesn't feel like a huge ask to consider.
John's over there.
Almost just answered my question. I was going to ask out of the 9 criteria, I think 47, 48 Because we haven't had, as a committee, very much experience using new criteria.
Right.
But I think we're pretty close to hitting 3 out of 9. I didn't know about sparks.
Well, if it's okay, it connects to what Bob was saying through Madam Chair. So I was just looking through the application. If you look on page 68 of the application, which is page 70 of the agenda document, there's an ad that says some reasons why Watson's bottled milk is gaining more favors. So if you read that article, it's an advertisement essentially. It talks about the fact that this dairy was using really new state-of-the-art technology in milk in the dairy industry. And so, for us in 2025, maybe we might think, well, dairy comes from a bag in the grocery store. But obviously, there's a lot of technological innovation involved in this type of industry. And the fact that this dairy, which is where this house was located, it says it had cement floors, which was really avant-garde because they usually had wooden floors. So the fact that they were being washed regularly, and so even if there's evidence, and I don't know enough to know whether there's still remnants of that cement floor there, but there's presently, and I think this is where that question of historical significance becomes really relevant. In 2025, there's a huge push towards agricultural technology, and farms are really innovating how they are managing our food supply. And this is an example of how this town, many over 100 years ago, was at the forefront of that same type of technology. As a historian, that is emblematic of historical significance. Like without question, it satisfies that. And because even if we don't even want to take the reeve out of the conversation from a technological perspective, this is emblematic of a very big movement that was taking place across Canada, not only in Aurora. So I'm always interested in the kinds of sources that are included in these kinds of reports, because sometimes I feel like they're included and they actually contradict the declarations made, which is that there isn't historical significance. This, I think, clearly demonstrates that there is.
Through Madam Chair, I can try and answer. Oh, sorry, not to overlook you, John, but maybe I can answer a couple questions.
Yeah.
Okay. So, Bob, I believe you're asking about the 9 and similar Cynthia too. In that train of thought too, right? I mean, in terms of scenarios or hypotheticals, the owner does have the right to appeal to the Ontario Land Tribunal as well, if there is a refusal at the council level. A report like this is prepared by a certified Canadian Association of Heritage Professionals. ERA is a reputable firm. I understand the comments on the table, but it is a professionally done report to that standard per se. That being said, though, I want to touch on what you said, Cynthia, because again, this is an open dialogue, and it's good to have this dialogue because there's options for improvement first and foremost. But what struck me with those comments in particular is a question to the committee almost, and with plaques, this would be its own different type of plaque. But that's something that we can always ask for too, in terms of if demolition should be supported, but you want to see, especially as a corner lot, perhaps the owner installs some sort of interpretive plaque that gives a little synopsis on the history of the dairy use and the dairy man and family. That's something that we can totally ask for, and then that gets built into the council report. So I think what the committee, if you don't mind, Madam Chair, me suggesting is that yes, the demolition is a component. Yes, the design of a new build is a component, but if there's sort of extras that are mitigating impacts as well. I think that's something that the consultant spoke to too, in terms of just speaking to the garages, because I raised that as well, in terms of they try to mitigate that with recessing or different materiality. Do I agree they probably should be detached? I agree with that as well, though, Bob. But taking that into sort of the historical context, if there's ways that we as a committee want to consider the demolition potentially being an option, but that the owner be required as a condition of demolition, an interpretive plaque be provided. That's something that we can most certainly request as well. Just for more mitigation or more opportunity, right? Like to mitigate.
Through you, Madam Chair. So I think obviously, we're all here because we care about heritage and local history. So clearly removing a home that clearly has that element to it is not something that you're probably going to find much favor with in the group, right? Obviously. Having said that, I think that there's ways of preserving the historical integrity of buildings. So again, I go back, like the concrete floor, my dad was a bricklayer, maybe that's why I care so much about concrete floors, but I think that is emblematic of maybe something that can be preserved. So if there is, if some of that still remains, which I don't know if it does or not, but if some of that remains, then that might be a way of, maintaining that connection. Because to me, I keep going back to this, and again, maybe I'm not understanding correctly, but if I heard you correctly, they can demolish the home, but it's still a heritage home.
Yes.
Right.
Pretty much, I'll circle back because I apologize.
That's okay.
Didn't answer that right away. Designation is a legal status on title.
Right.
So
the property is designated.
correct.
Got it.
So to put this in very simple terms, the actual construction materials they're part of the designation bylaw. For an individual property in particular, we'll have a designation bylaw registered on title that says XYZ are your architectural elements that may be preserved, your gable, your porch, things like that. In this case, it's not individually designated, so it is a little bit different too in that it's designated as part of the district, right? And so that's what the evaluation looks like from an individual perspective, recognizing that in perpetuity it will be designated as part of that district simply because it's in that boundary area, land-wise. Yeah.
So through you, Madam Chair, just to continue off of that, and again, maybe everybody else knows the answer, but I don't. So let's say that demolition proceeds, is an archaeological exploration inspired?
Through Madam Chair, the archaeological requirements under the ministry wouldn't apply in this case. It's only in situations where it's a new greenfield development adjacent to a stream where there may be potential of settlements, things like that are more applicable. There is a criteria that we do evaluate, but it wouldn't be applicable in this.
Thank you.
John.
Yes, through you, Madam Chair, to Adam. Is this a unique situation, or has there been any precedent set on similar requests?
Through you, Madam Chair, there's always been requests.
Okay.
Yeah, I think whether it's an alteration, just a strictly alteration, or a permit for demolition and rebuild, we've seen those quite frequently. I think Bob, you named a couple in the district itself. Yeah, this is a common request. And that's why these reports, I know some of us may disagree with some of this content, but that's why they are required as part of this application too, right? Because it is rooted in the provincial requirements, or at least the assessment of provincial requirements, and it does the evaluation on both sides of the coin, demolition as well as the
Through you, Madam Chair, just do one quick one. Is there a standard procedure that the town already has set? Because I know the stuff that's happening in Bursey, they're gonna tear down. There was the boot factory in there. They're gonna put a plaque up. They're probably gonna redo it. And exactly. I'm on. So in this case, is there a standard that the town requests if something is demolished and it was of significant value, any source, that a plaque will be put up in that case, like as they doing with the boot factory?
Yeah, so through you, Madam Chair, that's exactly what I kind of spoke to before. That's why we have the ability to negotiate this stage. This is the very first time this is becoming public, so to speak, in terms of the committee level discussion and then proceeding to council. But if there's asks that we want to have, this is the opportunity to do that.
Okay, that's how this works.
It's always a negotiated process in the sense that each site's going to have different context. I mean, Bursey's a condominium, for example, or it's a different scale, different density, different expectations from a development lens, different applications, zoning, OPA, official plan amendment versus this is relatively minor relative to something like Bursey, but that doesn't negate the process in terms of you can ask.
It's still a standard, like it's always something, there was something there, like it doesn't really matter in that respect.
Yeah, and that's
How
what
things work. Yeah, exactly. Okay, that's what I was wondering, how that.
Yep,
Okay,
for sure.
Thank you.
Emma had a question or comment.
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair, if I can, just to provide a quick clarification in terms of the associative value, and I take all your comments and your feedback, I appreciate that. I just want to clarify, so the dairy business itself wasn't located on this site, it was on the adjacent site. So the associative value, and we do call that out in the report as some value is there. The fact that the owners of the dairy had lived on site and there potentially was a storefront there, but we were just saying that any remnants, physical remnants, again, tangible value, we don't see that on site. So as Adam mentioned, in terms of these intangible value, those are things we can speak to, you know, commemoration, storytelling, those types of things. And that's something, yeah, that we would be happy to look towards. But just again, clarifying that the building or the business, the dairy business itself was located on the site to the north, which is, you know, 16 Spruce Street today.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Looks like you're in peace.
Just some of the last comments have confused me a little bit. For example, I was going to suggest, but I don't think I will, but I'll mention, but I'll push it, that once upon a time, properties such as this coming before us, we would do in-house evaluation, which didn't happen, or hasn't happened yet. Whether it would be different, whether it would be enough to save the house. I think in my mind, I'm not necessarily in love with the building that's currently there. I think it needs help. But I don't like what's proposed for all the reasons that I rattled off before.
Just one sec. Yeah. What happened to the staff evaluation? We always have those.
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair. So when the Heritage Register review was undertaken, that previous score sheet was removed by staff and council at that time.
Because they did that work.
They did, and at the same time, there's Ontario Regulation 906 is our core, so to speak. That is, I believe, the former score sheet pre-2019 or so, 2022, excuse me. I believe it had, actual numbering, where an individual in the committee may be able to number things, but that's no longer. That's evaluation is rooted in 906, and comments have to be based on 906.
Thank you.
No, I don't disagree with it. I just thought maybe with such things, we would be using this new criteria as a subgroup of the committee to come to the committee with an evaluation.
And you're saying that's not exactly applicable.
Well, through you, Madam Chair, I believe even just the comments presented now have all been based on this. If the committee feels that this property does meet 906, that would be comments related to council at this stage, yes. But there is no separate, separate score sheet like previously.
To me, the whole application kind of seems confusing because it has two addresses, and then we automatically assume that this is a semi, when really it's one lot. Is there a world that this could be one house with a rental unit down below? Like, now we maintain the heritage look, we can do a detached garage in the back. When I say we, owners. And still put a rental unit in the basement, you lose the rental. And you get a historical looking home. I think that's what is bothering everybody, is that semi-detached, which just doesn't fit on Spruce, and with the garages in the front, it just.
Right. No,
I don't think it's blending in the neighborhood.
Yes, so through you, Madam Chair, what we have seen at this committee prior to is granny suites or garden suites, things like that as well. Like, again, I don't want to suggest anything, but if the owner were to revise it with detached garage and say some sort of rental garden suite, or again, we can't necessarily stipulate that the owner may rent these as well too. Right? That's a bit separate from our heritage review, but this can be revised, right? And I want to ask the committee if revisions like that and interpretive plaque are made, is that something that's, I want the committee's thoughts on that. Would be appreciated.
A good example would be the project on Fleury, which was the house that that house, if you drive by real fast, like that house looks like it was always there. And they did a fantastic job. that, if you put that house on this lot, I think that a lot of people would be in more agreement with, like you have right here, like when you drive by 60 Fleury, it looks, right?
Yes. I'm sure 60/30 was interesting, as Bob mentioned, because even when it got to the committee of the whole and council stages, there's still debate, right? And it is a negotiated process. I think right until the 11th hour, we went on site and matched the bricks and got those red brick. Like, there's always going to be room for, this is the first inception, if you will, of this, and it can be modified, absolutely.
Okay.
To be Madam Chair, I personally don't have any issue with the semi concept, like it's already zoned R7. It's in the zoning for that area, and it's right across from high density, like in the Yonge Street kind of corridor. So I still have an issue with the two garages, because I think it looks very subdivision pedestrian.
Yeah.
And I have issues with the fact that basically no effort was put into actually making it look sympathetic with the area. So I don't care about the color, but the final color, but there's no shakes. There's no character brick on the side. It's just a standard brick, like nothing's there. There's no wood front porch, it's a concrete front porch. Like it wasn't even, like, no thought was put into making it sympathetic, other than the windows, which is a maybe heritage kind of element in terms of how the window grill looks. But for me, that's where my issue is. Like, just personally, is that regardless of if it comes down or not, I think it's the first question to answer. The second one being if something's to replace it, semi or not, like I think semi is more affordable, because if you were to put a detached there for any custom home, you're pushing probably $3 million, which is not affordable to the average person. And that person who's building that isn't going to rent out their basement, right? Whereas a semi, like somebody can still move into that area and enjoy it, and it's more accessible, but it's still, to me, it's the garage that kills it, because no houses in that area have that integrated garage like that with that look and feel.
Last question,
Comment would be, if you take a look at the house behind you there, it doesn't have a front porch on it, but it's a house. You put two front doors on that, right? Two front doors, which means it's semi on some. And then you put the garage, leave it where it is in the back as a two-door, each guy gets his own garage. You're kind of like, then you're looking more like the neighborhood. You really are in the same, but yeah.
I think you get it.
Yes.
hi. Why don't you come to the
Yeah,
table?
I just wanted to make a quick comment, and I appreciate all the feedback, and we do appreciate, the reason it's my daughter that's gonna move in, and the reason she is in love with historical districts. So we want to comply, we want to build a nice, beautiful historical home. I did want to mention part of the review process that we hired Era on Adam's recommendation. He gave us a list of consultants that we should use that are, accredited and reputable and would be well received at council and at the committee. Part of the process and part of the due diligence they did was we gave them a set of plans that we thought would work for my daughter and her fiance. And we submitted them to ERA, and they went through them and put the historical context and spin on them. So there's 7 or 8 major items, structural items. I think Emma could probably talk to all of the different architectural changes that were made to the house. What you see here, again, they're not architectural finished drawings. It's obviously not a rendering. It's got white aluminum. There's not going to be any white on the house. The brick color, very flexible. We'll work with the town with whatever brick color kind of works. At first pass, there's a lot of red brick in the area, so that's what the architect defaulted to. But there's a lot of changes made to the original plan. What you see here was what was submitted to ERA. She took our set of drawings, and I met with Adam at the desk and went through the plans. We submitted them to ERA, and she did make a number of changes and add a lot of fenestration on the Center Street side, some detail on the Center Street side. She made sure the 2 dwellings look separate. The roof lines are different. The windows are historical. We added wood elements into the house. So there's a lot of thought that went into it. We're happy to work again and make comments, make some changes, but I didn't want you to think we didn't put any thought into this. We've been working on this since November. Adam's been phenomenal to work with. He's been completely transparent, great response time. Again, he's been super helpful. But I didn't want you to think we just showed up and dropped something in your lap, because that's not true. There's been a lot of time, and yeah.
I mean, I thank you for your effort in showing us that.
For sure.
It seems though
Sure.
that the committee feels that it could be more sympathetic to the neighborhood, and one of the points was, there are no interior garages like this.
Well, there's a number of them in the area. I don't have the addresses with me, but there are a number of them
In the
area.
Heritage District?
Absolutely, absolutely. There's townhouses with attached garages. There's Center Street, Catherine Avenue, there's an attached garage.
Yeah, I'm responding to.
Sure, absolutely, no, absolutely. And again, the reason we're here is we want to build a beautiful home in the historical district. So we're gonna, yeah, for sure.
But there's just, I don't know, there's just missing.
Sure. Well, it's feedback. Again, these are not finished drawings, not finished renderings.
But,
There's feedback on both sides. We haven't asked for any variance. Obviously, the zoning is in place for semi-detached. We're not asking for any exceptions to be made. Lot size, massing, all the details that our architect went through to make sure it conforms. So there could be some aesthetic changes. So we're happy to work with you. Again, brick color, we can work with you as well. But
thank you.
We're happy for your comments and look forward to working with you to make this a project a success.
Thank you. And we thank you for choosing the Heritage District. As you've chosen the Heritage District. This is, and this, I was on council when we fought for this district. It was a hard fight. It's our only district, the other one.
We weren't aware of the dairy farm. I'm not sure how large the dairy farm was in the area.
I don't know, but this Heritage District is extremely important to many people in and outside of the district. So you've heard the comments and
For sure. Well, we'll reconnect with Adam and get next steps and take all of your thought and feedback and your passion to heart, and we'll make sure we put something in the area that looks appropriate. That's the goal.
It's yes, appropriate in the context
And
that it's
sympathetic,
it's a really important heritage district to us.
It was really important for me to make sure you all understood. We didn't just drop this in your lap.
No,
We spent a lot of
thank you.
time and money with Adam and with our architect, who's done a very thorough report. It's over 80 pages long. We didn't just, wake up one morning and thought this was something that was gonna happen. So we wanted to be thorough and respect your opinion and welcome your comments.
Thank you, and so thank you. We've heard you, you've heard us, and thanks.
Great, thanks.
And good luck to your daughter. Good luck.
Nice to meet the neighbors.
You guys live in Aurora right now?
We're in New York. Yeah, the high school, if that helps.
Okay.
So one semi is for yourself and the other one?
It'd be her brother.
Oh,
yeah.
Well, I'm not gonna use the word lucky again, but.
Well, you may not feel lucky if his sister's his landlord, so we'll see how that goes.
Okay. I think we're done. So, hold on, where's my notes? I believe we already have a mover and a second.
We will receive the presentation, so we can just put a mover to, it's like all the comments. The item's already on the agenda, so we can put a motion to receive the memo and refer the comments to staff for action, which is the recommendation.
Thank you very much. Oh, I do have one. If this is a heritage property, yeah, retains heritage, then the trees on it are also heritage.
And through Madam Chair, as was discussed, if there is any request to remove a tree, that has to come back as a separate application from that group.
Before the site plan is reviewed?
Before building, yeah, exactly, before any construction.
And currently, as it is a corner lot, I think the side yard setback is about 20 feet, so those trees do fall within that setback, so they would be maintained.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's, we have heritage trees
Sure.
and we have heritage lots that have trees on them, so.
Yeah.
They all count.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, all those, no, first, mover and who spoke to those? Thank you. Bob is gonna move it. And you're gonna say, okay, although you both spoke. This is a great committee. Wow. Okay, I've been on a lot of committees, including New Heritage, so sometimes the people are just, they just get it and they're not afraid to speak, and That's a pleasure when it's that way. So now we are going to call for vote. All those in favor? We're voting to receive, that's really all we can do, to receive and send them to staff. And it's, yes, me and us and so let's do new business. I think you said you were gonna hire new business items.
If it's okay for me to do that, yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So just wanted to update everyone on the project that the co-op students have been working on with the Heritage. I haven't heard any problems, so I'm assuming that everything's going well. So I've been supporting him in my role here, not in my role as a teacher, although helping with the project as teacher. So he's working on 15120 Yonge Street. So he is at this stage, he's done a lot of preliminary research up until the 1900s. So now he's moving into the next stage of that research. He, as is often the case with historical research, you sometimes hit dead ends because you're pulling in lots of puzzle pieces, and this kid is in grade 11. So it's not an easy thing for a student that age to do, especially when they haven't done it before. But he's been working at the planning office, he's gone to the library, he's been using Ancestry, on land registry, the Find a Grave database. So the research is progressing. My hope is that, when is our next meeting? June? My hope is that he'll be able to present at that meeting. So that he doesn't know that yet, but I will. Excellent. Well, I'll push him. I'll shove him and he'll be there. So, he is doing the work. It is sometimes very arduous work, but my hope is that once we get to the end of the semester with him, that we'll have an example of the type of work that can be undertaken in an ongoing way, so that we end up with a really animated directory rather than just a list of addresses. Because I think that, to circle back to our first delegation, I think if we want people to care about local history, we need them to understand the narrative, and addresses do not provide narrative. Stories and people and history provide narratives. So yeah, he's progressing. There's good work being done. So yeah. Were there any specific questions that anybody would like me to bring back to him, or anything about the process that you would like me to further clarify?
Give a reader from advice.
Okay. I do my best.
From your questions.
Thank you.
I know you rattled off the Yonge Street
Yeah.
address, which building?
15120, I can't remember the name of it.
Yes.
Sorry, what's it?
Tallest.
Tallest.
It's just tap dancing lessons on the third or fourth floor.
Well, then it's gonna get a designation just for that, I think.
How many years ago?
We want photos.
I'm happy to report though that he did not show up in the research from the 1800s, so that's a good thing, right?
Okay, I think we're done.
Very quickly, Madam Chair, there were a couple of discussion points from our last meeting. First being the discussions I've been having for the better part of 6 weeks with the Ontario Heritage Trust on the delegation that Chris wants me at our last meeting for the Armory plaque. So the OHC Ontario Heritage Trust, they have indicated that they view the plaque and that specific wording as a product of its time, an archival product of its time, as when they installed it or erected it, and that for them, there's no grounds for them to replace or remove it, particularly since it doesn't involve an issue of sensitivity. That being said, I took it a step further with them and did ask, what would it entail for us as a town to even change that one word, right? And they advised that would entail an entire new manufacture of the plaque and a cost of $8,500.
Okay.
So that's where that stands.
Can you remind me the word, is it the American, or is it, yeah, which is the correct type of word?
That's
Yes,
and that the Armory is operating as a military facility and it no longer.
Yes, yeah.
Operating as, currently. So
Thank you.
I thought the American
that
portion was correct.
Yes, it is correct.
Currently
It's just, I think the concern was that some people might
Currently
misunderstand why it says American.
Right. Like the big thing was currently operating when it's now
Yeah.
not.
Right.
That's where we stand, for council's knowledge as well.
Council will not, we cannot afford to cheat. Use the taxpayers cannot afford to cheat.
And, Madam Chair, the second update I had was there were questions on the Patch House timing in particular. I have liaised with community service staff on that matter as well. And they have indicated to me that the work on the Patch House will begin shortly now that the snow and frost is thawing out. First step is electrical work as well. And that they hope that the facility will be ready for use by the June-July timeline of this year. Thanks.
Oh, wedding season.
Yes.
But there's no water.
Correct.
There's no water.
No room for cold feet.
Usually
That too.
Only summer
It's
Right.
Ask a question to the chair, if we, at the, like at a ratepayers association meeting, or town, like the town park, if we have our AGM, are we allowed to discuss, what's available, like the plaques, can we encourage people to, yeah, all that stuff is fine, we don't need to have any permission. Yeah,
Didn't even show the YouTube.
well, I probably will, cause I'm wondering.
Just a question just popped into my head, if, sorry.
Yeah.
The fair, the street fair that happens usually the first week in June. Is there a mechanism by which maybe it would be beneficial to set up some information about Patch House or about the Plaque program, or just maybe, yeah, like spreading the word about some local history project?
The town of Aurora has a
You know, a
table.
corporate booth or like a heritage advisory committee booth. I'm not
You
sure, I know we don't, but I made.
That's what I'm wondering, if it might be, I don't know if that might be something that.
No,
people
but
might be
we could,
or a part of the Aurora.
There is one, through that, chair, there is one, I don't mind going and doing that, but if you wanted it to be specifically the heritage committee, that would be a different ask.
I'm not gonna tell everybody they have to be there, but I'm happy to be there.
to be part of the town of Aurora.
Well, just to stand there and maybe provide information about the
Okay.
Plaque program, or just to update, just so people, I think people generally, again, if you're interested in local history, you know. But if it's not on your radar, then you might not know all the things that are happening, right?
That's why I thought that we have an AGM coming up in May, which is before the next meeting, that's why I'm asking this now for the town park, so. You know,
That would be,
we're,
Rod, are you
yeah, we're-
listening?
I don't think he can make the meeting with that.
Oh, he left,
He did,
okay.
but he can't be at the meeting, for some reason he's got a conflict.
I think there is one at the farmers market for the historical society for, I think there is one, but that's.
The historical-
That's the historical society, and
Yeah.
maybe we could have one for the
Maybe
town,
we
just
can-
as like a, just a handout,
Just- yeah.
literature, or answer any questions.
We need to somehow,
That's why I'm
I'm
asking.
not gonna tell you to dress up, but.
What do you expect me to wear?
No, we need somehow, I just can't.
Like, to be branded, like, so people know who they're on
Somehow.
behalf of?
Yeah, or something.
No.
Something.
I'm not agreeing to wearing a house, okay? I'm not doing that.
Oh,
Just a plaque.
I think I'm gonna call for an adjournment. Well, I need a motion to adjourn, so who is gonna? We've got one candidate right here. Why don't we let the bids?
Motion.
Okay, all those in favor?